All right, welcome back, true believers, for another episode of White Rocket's All of the Avengers. I am your host, Van Allen Plexico of AvengersAssemble.net, www.avengersassemble.net for the last 27 years, I think. Yeah, going on 28. We're coming up on the 28th anniversary of AvengersAssemble.net. Wow, that's incredible. All right, we are here this episode to talk about one of the most famous issues, I think, in Avengers history. Certainly one of the most famous covers, as you're seeing right there on the screen right now. By the way, I'm trying something different this time. I've switched the monitors around so that I'm looking at the comic while I talk about it here, rather than having to constantly look over here, which I think is distracting. But I'm used to looking over there, so it's going to take some getting used to. But anyway, I'm going solo this time. We're just going to run through Avengers 23. I know this is the first issue of a two-part story. And by the way, I think it's interesting that during this time, Stan was seemingly very into these two-part stories. We've done several in a row now. You know, he would do this sort of thing where the first issue introduces a villain, and meanwhile the Avengers have some kind of internal situation going on, and then they collide some way. You know, the villain enacts their scheme, the Avengers get pulled into it, and the first attempt by the Avengers to deal with it usually goes badly. And so that's where the first issue of the two-story part always ends, is with the Avengers like, oh no, what are we going to do now? And the villain like, ha ha, I have you. And then in the second issue, somehow the Avengers get back together, they recover, and they save the day, and the villain is exposed. So it was kind of I mean, you know, in some ways it could be like the formula for an annual where you have more pages. And so you have those, you know, the annuals often have those chapter breaks scattered throughout them. So, but it seemed like Stan just kind of got fixated on doing them this way. One of the things that I want to point out about this cover, you know, there are a number of Avengers covers that have the villain big looming over. The Super Adaptoid, famously, which I think is in the 40s, maybe, is like that, and there are others. And I do like that about this one. And there's a number that have the Avengers kind of scrambling around the bottom of the picture like they are here. But what I think this cover really stands out, though, it was done by Jack Kirby and John Romita. And by the way, even though Don Heck does the pencils on this issue, John Romita, and I believe what may be his first work for Marvel during this period. This is before he goes to do Spider-Man. So I think John Romita Sr. may begin his Marvel work here with Avengers 23. I may be wrong, but I think that's right. So anyway, what really stands out about this cover is the coloring. And not the bottom third, because, you know, the Avengers are colored pretty normally, but not, you know, the upper third. It's like this cover is divided into thirds. The bottom third is the Avengers, and it looks pretty standard. The top third has the Avengers logo over that outer space image, and that looks really good. I mean, I think that between the colorists, the work the colorist did, and I'm going to look my little cheat sheet here. The colorist, at least interior, is Stan Goldberg. Though I don't think. Let me go ahead and flip over for a second. No, we're still not getting the colorist listed. We've talked about that a lot, but I think it is Stan Goldberg, is what I'm told from my research. But it's that middle section, I think. That section here. See if I get my little hand thing on here. There you go. It's like the section from this starburst down toward Kang's hand, his left hand, is just so incredible looking, between the way Kang looks, and like I said, especially the coloring, because that's not Kang's coloring at all. but it's giving this impression of like he's in the shadows of this bright light behind him, and it's turned him kind of a dark orange and yellow. And I think that works a lot better. If you color this the normal color, it's just not going to be as effective. And heaven help us, I think that at least one of the reprints of this issue, maybe in like the masterwork or one of those type of things, I think they did recolor it to where he's green and purple with the blue mask. It just does not work at all. So I'm not normally a big fan of coloring characters a different color than they're supposed to be just for effect. But I got to tell you, here it really works. And I give, if it was Stan Rosenberg or whoever, just incredible work here. This is one of the most striking, evocative covers, I think, in Avengers history. And I've always thought that. So let's get into it a little bit. I have a few things to say about it, not a ton. I'm only going to do this issue, by the way, though, 23, because a lot of stuff happens in this issue. And I don't want to do like an hour and a half show here. So I'm going to kind of just look at this issue, and we'll come back with another episode where we kind of go through the conclusion, because this is another one of these two-parters. So this one is called Once an Avenger. And again, if you don't know what happens in this issue and you don't know what happened at the end of the previous issue, then you might think, why doesn't it say like at the mercy of the Conqueror or Kang strikes, or, in fact, my first Sentinel superhero novel that I wrote years ago was kind of based on this idea of Kang, and it's called When Strikes the Warlord, which is kind of like the Conqueror, So I always thought that should say When Strikes the Conqueror or something like that, or at Kang's command. I mean, there's so many things you could put down there. So I'm like, why does it say Once an Avenger? Because he's not an Avenger. But it's because of Cap, right? That's what you learn when you read the story, is you remember, oh yeah, this is the one where Cap had left the team and he's going to come back. So let's get into that. Now, first up, we have the Avengers are down to just 3 members. It's kind of crazy to imagine the Avengers with fewer members than the Fantastic Four even. But just 3 members. Has Marvel ever had a team with 3 members? But they're not even like doing a old order changes time for a recruiting drive type story. And that's totally what I would have thought that Stan would have done here, is let's have a recruiting drive. But they don't. They're just going to go forward with 3 members, and we'll see. Stan Lee, of course, wrote it. Don Heck continues as your penciler, with John Romita as your inker, interestingly enough. And you can see some of his, it's still early and it's not super smooth, but he does, I think he helps Don Heck's work a little bit. And then you have Sherry Gale as the letterer. I'm not familiar with that person. Let me see if I can do some quick research here and tell you that Sherry Gale is Sherry Gale. Okay. They kind of run it all together, and she's the letterer, so she can, I'm assuming she, right, can make that decision. But anyway. All right, this is a blend of finest story, art, and fantasy picked at the peak of Marvel flavor by those folks. Let's simmer for 5 minutes and read with gusto. All right. So Captain America has walked out feeling he has failed as the leader, and now the squabbling begins. Oh, it's an Avengers story if they're squabbling. So thank you, Wanda, for calling out Clint. You constantly mocked him and challenged his leadership. Now see what your taunts have accomplished. Yeah, Clint, take that. It's your fault. It's all your fault. And then it says a lot about Captain America that Quicksilver says he may yet return to us. After all, where else can he go? Well, maybe he could go found his own team. Maybe he could go start some other team, or maybe he can join the Defenders. I guess they're not around yet, but. And again, I'm surprised we didn't get an issue of Fantastic Four where Captain America tries to join the Fantastic Four. Everybody else has over the years, right? From She-Hulk to I say that, and then the Impossible Man. I mean, there have been a number of people that have kind of subbed in with the Fantastic Four. So why not Captain America? Oh, Spider-Man, famously, right? So why not let Cap do that? He's not the type to take a job selling apples. I tell you what, Hawkeye uses this slang that I guess I have a feeling that even back in the early 60s, it was already kind of old fashioned. I wonder if that's like the way that Stan talked. I think it kind of is, you know. I wonder when Jack Kirby left Marvel the first time, if Stan said he'll be back, he's not the type to take a job selling apples. Oh man, well, we'll see. All right, so moving along. So Wanda just points out that he could get a job somewhere else. It's not going to be that hard for Captain America. And Clint is like, sounds to me like you got a crush on old Methuselah. Oh, here's the oh my gosh, Clint. Here goes Methuselah. Remember, at this point, Cap was in the ice from 45 to 63. So, you know, I end up doing a lot more math on this show than I really want to. What, 18 years? Yeah, 18 years. He's Methuselah to Hawkeye because he was frozen for 18 years. I mean, what would Hawkeye call him if, you know, today, if Hawkeye was still a jack? Well, I'm not going to say it. But if Hawkeye still acted like that toward Cap today, when now he's been in the ice, he would have been in the ice like what, 65, 70 years, 60 years, something like that. So, and then Wanda doesn't deny it. She's like, even if I do, Hawkeye, that's no concern of yours. Yeah. By the way, Wanda has different colored hair here than she normally does. It's a lot darker. It's almost black. And it just looks odd. It looks more like, I don't know. It just doesn't look like her for some reason. She usually has like a little more red in her hair, I feel like. Not like Natasha, but a little bit, right? Quicksilver tries to intervene, and Hawkeye calls him the Billy Graham of our group. Okay. Wanda says there's no more to be gained by this continual bickering, and Stan is like, oh, wrong you are. This is making great entertainment. Keep bickering. So Wanda starts to tear up, reminiscing about Cap working out in the private gymnasium. So confident, so handsome. To me, he was every inch an Avenger. Well, what is old every inch an Avenger up to? He's, you know, Steve, who could do a lot of things. Last we checked, he was trying to contact Nick Fury about working with S.H.I.E.L.D., I believe. He ends up in a suit and tie going to visit the champ, who I assume is like the heavyweight boxing champion, but it's not Cassius Clay Muhammad Ali as it was in real life. It's some other white dude. So he applies for the job. They try to talk him out of it. And what you might expect happens, a guy that kind of sounds like the Thing and kind of looks like Ben Grimm. And of course, Cap ends up having to like thrash all these people. So here comes your standard Stan Lee huckster guy, right? He's got this is great. He's got his bowler hat, his cigar, his mustache, his checkered vest. It's just the green suit. This is like the guy that shows up in so many Stan Lee stories, you know, trying to sell something. I feel like sometimes Stan must have seen himself that way a little bit. You got style, class. You're just what the champ needs. You got yourself a job, mister. That suits me fine. My name's Steve Rogers. I don't care if they call you Chuckles. You're my kind of fight. Oh, God bless you, Stan. Wow. How do we get along without that kind of dialogue? I don't know. I don't know. So now Steve is working as a sparring partner for the champ, but he's at night. He's still reminiscing about what he's lost with the Avengers. I keep seeing Wanda, Hawkeye, and the others. Now, wait a minute. Is this kind of like on Gilligan's Island when we say, when they don't say the professor and Marianne, they say, and the rest? I keep seeing Wanda, Hawkeye, and the others. So, Quicksilver. Is he maybe he means Iron Man and Thor and the Wasp and Hank, but it just comes across like he's saying that Quicksilver is the others. Anyway, how long will I be tortured by my memories? Will I ever be able to forget? He could go see Mentalo or something and take care of that. But here we go. Meanwhile, alone in his OptiView lab, In a far distant century, the scientific scourge known to mankind as Kang the Conqueror. Oh, this is good. He's plotting his revenge, and he realizes Captain America is separated. Now, this is something that's been remarked on by others, which is that, you know, Kang has access to any time. So why is he behaving chronologically? Why is he, you know, going the same distance in time in the 40th century or whatever as they are back in their century? Why doesn't he just find the most opportune time to attack them and attack them there? Instead, it's like he's looking in on them like it's concurrently. I get the feeling that Stan is not totally comfortable with time travel stories, even though he uses them quite a bit. But do with that what you will. I think I've made my point. So Kang wants to go back and conquer the 20th century. It just drives him crazy. And with the team, see, he says, with their mightiest fighting team at its lowest ebb, the time has come for Kang to strike. The time has come. You could go to that time anytime. You could wait 20 years from where you are right now and then go to this time. Why is now the time has come? I don't understand. Anyway, he says, my plan is infallible, my power invincible. Let the Avengers, it kind of sounds like Mike Tyson. Let the Avengers beware. Okay, cool. I like it. So they see his ship, and I think it's a UFO. It's actually, and this is like the greatest thing Kang has ever done, honestly. He makes his vehicle look like an extra floor of Avengers Mansion. And not only that, but the Avengers go running upstairs into it, and they don't realize until they're inside that there's an extra floor to the house they've been living in all this time. So, but it's brilliant. I love it, right? What gives if there's no one here? Hawkeye, Wanda, I've never seen this room before. Where did it come from? You're right. This used to be the corridor to the roof. And then a purple gloved hand clicks the button. By the way, I have to say, because this is we've had Kang before, but this is a much more entertaining Kang than the Kang we had back in issue 8 or whatever it was. I really like this Kang. I gotta say, I still feel like Kang's costume has not evolved yet to where it needs to be. I think his helmet is too bulbous, right? I like Kang to have like an Iron Man helmet almost, more than this sort of Mysterio fishbowl thing with the bands and all. But that being said, everybody loves his face. That blue mask is perfect. It's such an incongruous color to go with the purple and green. But I also want to say that purple and green are such a great color combination that I really, really like Kang's costume so much. So he knocks them out and carries them. I feel like I'm looking because there was something I was going to say here, but I don't see what it was. So I'm going to keep going. He takes them back to his own century, whereupon we learn that Kang is an unwelcome visitor at the royal court. Now, we don't know what royal court this is. I guess presumably in the 40th century, which I think is when where his empire is. There must be like these little city-state kingdoms, maybe. And so he's trying to take over this one kingdom where people wear eye gear, apparently. And he wants to marry Princess Ravonna. Now, that name is going to be important. And if you watched, I believe it was the Loki Disney Plus show. Man, I remember the first time they mentioned that name Ravonna, and I fell on the floor. I fell off the couch onto the floor. And my wife and my daughter are like, what's going on? And I'm like, you don't understand. It's Ravonna. Oh my gosh. This is before we knew that Kang for sure was going to be involved. So when I heard that, I was just like, oh, here we go. And of course, we're going to get Kang soon in the new Ant-Man movie. So I'm recording this in November of 2022. So we're just weeks away from or months, I guess, from seeing Kang for the first time. He was in a Loki thing, but he was more Immortus in that. Anyway, silence, you are merely puppet rulers, and you know that full well. Kang is the power here, now, and always. If you incur my displeasure, I may not permit you to one day rule the universe at my side, Ravana. I'd rather die. That too can be arranged. With Kang, all things are possible. Well, so this is again another one of Stan's sort of standard storylines, where he has the villain wanting to marry the princess, the beautiful woman, and he's acting like, of course she wants to marry him, and she's resisting, and they bicker, and it's a kind of a standard story, right? Usually they come around, or either she gets rescued or she changes her mind. We'll see what happens here. So the dad, the king, I guess, says he's leading Ravana away. Do not incur his evil wrath. And she says, it matters not, my father. Never would I share the throne with a commoner, not if all the might of the universe were his. So this is now suddenly turning into kind of a Napoleon story, right? Where Kang is a commoner, not royal enough for Ravana. And it sounds like she's the one that rules something, and he wants to marry her so he can rule along with her. And I'm like, but if he rules half the universe or time or whatever it is Kang rules, which is never entirely clear, to be honest with Kang, what exactly is he planning to gain from marrying her? And then he talks about, yet I, who have conquered worlds, allow one helpless female to defy me because she has captured my heart. Okay. And he even says, it calls her kingdom postage stamp. You whose postage stamp kingdom could be overwhelmed by the merest fraction of my invincible army. So if it's that small and that weak, why does he want to conquer it? Or, he wants to conquer it because he wants to conquer everything, but why it specifically? Why does he want to marry her? Why does he want to rule beside her? What is it about her kingdom that's so unique in one way, but yet it's a postage stamp in the other? It's just not entirely clear. All right. Meanwhile, Captain America hears on the radio that the Avengers have disappeared, so he proceeds to knock out the champ with one punch to go and do something. We don't know exactly what yet. Now the Avengers wake up inside these glass upside down goblets or something. And the Hawkeye can't get out. Quicksilver can't get out. Here goes Stan again. When Stan talks about the Fantastic Four, what would he always say about Sue? She's the weakest member. And to be fair, when she could just turn invisible, that might well have been true. But once she gets her force field powers, she's arguably the strongest member, right? Well, Wanda has this hex power that could wipe out the world, the universe or something. Although I know that back then it was still weaker, and she hasn't studied with Agatha Harkness yet. If you've only watched the TV show, yes, Wanda studies with Agatha Harkness and learns how to use her powers. She's not a villain so much like in the TV show. But they describe Wanda here as the frail-looking beauty whom many consider to be the weakest Avenger. And I'm going, she could basically make Hawkeye and Quicksilver's heart stop beating by looking at them. How is she the weakest member? She's the only Avenger that can defeat Ultron, we find out later. How is she the weakest Avenger? But, again, so she makes the glass smash open, though, of course, making the glass smash open nearly kills her, but she does it. So now she's leaning on Hawkeye. Lean on me, doll. You'll be okay as long as Hawkeye's around. And hey, look, Quicksilver doesn't object to that. If that was the Vision, Quicksilver would be all up in his business. Unhand my sister, you mechanical whatever, But if it's Hawkeye, who just, instead of being a very polite and nice synthezoid, instead is just an a-hole, right? That's okay for Wanda to, hang on him, I guess. All right, more gum flapping from Kang. I mean, honestly, Kang, you're starting to work my last nerve here. They realize they're prisoners in the future. They go into battle. A lot of talk. He calls her gorgeous. They're going. I like that they're being proactive. They make a point here, and they're quoting Cap. Quicksilver quotes Cap. Clint makes fun of him for quoting Cap. But I do like that the Avengers are proactive here, right? They go on the attack. They don't sit back and let Kang's forces attack them. And that's pretty smart. But they get captured again anyway. Hawkeye drops an arrow through this air vent. Boom. They get loose. Kang tells his army of warriors to pursue the fleeing trio no longer. I shall deal with them personally as only I can. Now he turns off the lights. That's an impressive power. I have that power too. I can go turn off the lights. He has a simple spectrum inverter, which he zaps them with. And my entire brain seems numb, says Wanda, but Quicksilver and Hawkeye are stronger. Perhaps they will not be as effective. Stop it, Wanda. You're the most powerful Avenger. You need to cut out all that talk about how you're not as strong as them. That just bugs me. Quicksilver, though, is the one who manages to evade the rays or whatever. And as Kang is trying to figure out what's going on with him, somebody comes up behind Kang and says, "You call yourself Conqueror, I call you Coward." A new player takes a hand in the grim game of doom. What? Who dares? I dare. Your victory is meaningless unless you defeat Captain America 2. That's fair enough, even though you're not an Avenger currently, but okay. Now, Kang thinks he carries the Avengers Recreator, asterisk, the accursed instrument which Iron Man once used to probe the recent past. By shining it upon their building, he learned that it was Kang who abducted his fellow Avengers. Let me look ahead for a second. I don't. Does it ever say how Captain America gets to the 40th century? I don't think it ever tells us how Captain America finds them. It says that this machine, I've got something to say about that, by the way, but it says that this machine enables Cap to know where to look, like what happened to them, that it was Kang. But did he have to go to Latveria and borrow Dr. Doom's time machine? And if he did, why did he bring the Recreator with him through the time machine? See, it's one of those things where they needed to get all this done in one panel. So you show him with the machine and you have the villain explain what the hero must have done with it. But when you stop and think about it for a minute, none of it makes any sense because Cap had no way to get to the future. And there was no reason for him to carry a detection machine when he had already detected that it was Kang. Now, on top of all that, let's look at the asterisk. We used this gadget issues ago, but if you can remember when, you're better than we are. Smiley, that would be Stan. Well, I'm sitting here when I reread this issue today before this show, I was sitting here going, you did? You used it issues ago? And Kang says it was Iron Man who used it. And I'm going, I don't have any memories. I mean, it's entirely possible I've forgotten or missed it, but I have no memory of Iron Man ever or anybody using a Recreator machine to probe the recent past. So I looked it up because I was sure, but I wanted to make positive. And I looked it up, and according to my research, Stan was wrong, and a similar machine was used in Journey into Mystery, but not by Iron Man. Let me see if I can find this specific. Let's see. Yeah, Smiley admits that Stan admits the creative team lost track of when the Recreator device was last used by Iron Man. It is possible it was a non-Avengers issue, or it was confused with another device, such as the image projector used in issues 3 and 12. And somebody else, I can't remember, mentioned that it was used by somebody. It was used by somebody in Tales in Journey into Mystery. So, okay. So it must be that Stan just got it confused with a different story. Okay. But in any case, I don't know why he's carrying it. So now Ravana is using the opportunity to kind of poke fun at Kang. Will the conqueror of vast galaxies let such a challenge go unheeded? Again, if he's the conqueror of vast galaxies, why does he want her postage stamp kingdom? It's driving me nuts. Ravana. Rovanian. the forest world of forest land of Middle Earth. No, Ravana. So you have seen fit to grace my command room with your presence. And he's like, this is my chance beyond to prove beyond any doubt that I alone am worthy of her love. I'll transport him through the centuries to demonstrate no man is my master. Now I love this. Heck and Ramita draw Cap falling through time, and Stan's caption is, you can write your own caption for this one. Any reader who can't guess what's happening just isn't a true Marvelite. Well, I'm going to guess, being, I think, a true Marvelite, I'm going to guess that you're traveling through time, Cap. Is that fair? Okay, well, that was neat. Whatever. Why do you tamper with the direction control, Ravana? Let me determine where the primitive Avenger shall land. It will make the game more interesting, my arrogant one. So we send Captain America somewhere else. And instead, Cap materializes in front of Quicksilver. Cap, it's you. You found us. I don't know how, but we're together again. This is no time for a class reunion, boy. Clue me in fast. Well, it'll take more than a few choruses of Auld Lang Syne to beat Kang in his own game. Well, apparently what Ravana did was know Kang's controls well enough to be able to send Cap like down the hallway rather than through time, which is interesting. Okay. Now, here comes some of Kang's guards, and the Avengers are fighting them. So we get a nice little battle here. And Pietro says, I did not realize until now how much we missed you, Cap. Well, yeah, because Cap's awesome. Kang is mad, out of my sight. Kang has no stomach for failures. I am more than a match for any number of Avengers. I shall do battle alone. Silence. Your punishment will be swift and severe. Now go. So Kang, this panel right here, man. This is what I need in my life, right? I have 2 big computer monitors here, and I was just saying on our podcast last night, the Babylon 5 podcast, that what I really need is a setup like in one of these, techno thriller movies where they got all like a wall of computer monitors. That's what I really need. But I would happily settle for Kang's setup there of 8 monitors at his big control panel. That's a very Kirby looking panel, by the way. I give Don Heck and John Romita credit because that's a very Kirby looking panel. But that's like my dream right there, is to have like 8 monitors, some of them showing people that kind of look like Celestials, to be honest with you. So Quicksilver and Captain America attack Kang. Kang uses force fields, which makes me happy because that's kind of one of his things, is using force fields. He also somehow, before Cap's shield can strike me, my previously arranged molecule expander is already beginning to operate. Not only does it change the direction of your bumbling weapon, but causes its molecules to grow as well, making it large enough to crush you. So Cap's shield gets that big. Again, if it's indestructible, I'm not sure how it's able to be changed in any way like that, but there you go. And Quicksilver is able to, I'm not exactly clear on what happens here. The art is nice, such as it is, but again, I feel like it's the case of Stan trying to fit too many things into too few panels, and then he has to explain it with dialogue, right? That, to me, we've gone through now almost 23 issues of Avengers on this show, plus a few extras, right? And my conclusion has become that one of the things that Stan tends to do the worst, and again, he does so many things wonderfully that I'm not just wanting to bag on Stan. I'm not trying to be the Hawkeye of against Stan. But one of the things that Stan just drives me crazy with in these early 60s issues, these mid 60s issues, he tries to put too much story, or maybe the artist does, too much story into too little space, right? And then when it's not clear what's going on, he then has to put more word balloons to explain what you're seeing, because it doesn't make sense. And so you end up with several small panels that are confusing because you can't see everything that's going on, and then a bunch of word balloons on top of all that to explain it. So Kang throws the shield and it clearly hits him, but then Quicksilver distracts Kang as he's throwing it again. Maybe it comes back to him. See, again, we needed another panel here where the shield bounces off a Cap and Kang catches it, which shows that Kang has some pretty cool skills along the lines of Captain America, right? And then he gets it and he throws it again, and it was because of Quicksilver that it doesn't hit him the second time. I mean, that's my theory, but it's certainly not borne out by the art or anything, or the dialogue. It seems like he just throws it once, but that doesn't make sense. So Kang must still be made to realize that nobody is immune from an Avengers attack. Now, I think that was one of the things I was going to mention earlier, and I missed it, but I got to point this out. This is something that's been on my mind about the first 23 issues as well. It's like from the very jump, and Thor did it a lot early on, and I think Quicksilver and Captain America do it later. From the very beginning, though, there's this sense of there's this whole thing about the Avengers. We have our traditions. We have the way we do things. Nobody can speak that way to an Avenger. The Avengers always succeed. There's all these things where they invoke this great tradition and history of the Avengers. And I'm like, you haven't even got 24 issues out yet. Where is this? I mean, they were invoking it like in the first, second, third issue. Always once an Avenger, always an Avenger. Okay, where did that come from? All these sort of Avengers traditions that, when I started reading the Avengers when I was a kid, it was Avengers famously 162. I've always said I started with Avengers 162. That was my first issue, the Bride of Ultron. And, they would occasionally allude to these sort of things like that. Like the Avengers have these traditions and these mottos and stuff. And I'm like, wow, 162 issues. So I wonder how many dozens of issues must have gone by while they were earning those. And you go back and read it from the beginning, and the answer is really not many, if any. They just started saying these things. They just decided that once an Avenger, always an Avenger. They just decided that you don't, you have to be shown. Nobody can do that to an Avenger, right? All these various things. And I realize that there's some better examples I'm forgetting kind of in the heat of the moment here. But if you go back and look through the first 24 issues, over and over, you find references to something that makes it sound like the Avengers have been around for 20 years and have longstanding traditions, and they hadn't. So it's kind of like Stan wanted to give them this stature, right? This grandiosity, but they never really earn it. I just never got the sense in those early issues that they were, and like people would see them in the early issues and all the way through here and be like, oh, it's the Avengers. Well, the Avengers or whatever, they're the greatest, Like, well, how do you know that? They fought like 3 villains at that point. So anyway, I've just been that's been weighing on me. I'll probably revisit that again when there's more examples of it that pop up. But anyway, so Quicksilver fights Kang, strikes him down with some kind of lightning effect. And then Ravonna and her dad are watching and see how easily he bested the courageous Primitive, said the king. And when next you recover consciousness, it shall be to swear allegiance to Kang or die. And Ravonna notes how bravely the Avengers fought. And now Kang says, now, my lovely one, I demand your answer. I have earned your hand in marriage by right of conquest. Because clearly Kang, at this point in his career, Kang thinks that all that matters is beating up superheroes and conquering territory. And if he does that well, that means the pretty lady should marry him. And how he thinks that is indicative of somebody should be able to marry you is kind of lost on me here. But she's still kind of like on the Avengers side. She's like, yeah, the remaining two will have recovered soon. And he's like, they're child's play. I command you to speak. No one commands a princess. So, and then he reminds her, your crown is yours by my leave only. 'Tis Kang who is the power here. So if she has the crown by his leave, why does he need to marry her to have the power of the king? Again, it's all confusing. Yeah, countless worlds have fallen before my banner. Yours have I spared because of love for you. This gets us into kind of Avengers Forever territory, where Kang had actually gone out in the universe, I believe, and conquered other worlds and stuff. So he has an army there standing by. I might have given him my heart, says Ravana, had he wooed me with tenderness, with gallantry. He might have been the Prince Charming of my dreams, were he not a conqueror. Well, his name is Kang the Conqueror, so buyer beware. You know what you're getting when you get involved with him. I wanted to mention that too, by the way. He's Kang the Conqueror. Lord, did they need to get rid of that comma, right? Kang the Conqueror is a name. Kang, comma, the Conqueror is like turning into a sentence, and I don't like that. So it does not need a comma there. Just Kang the Conqueror. So now Ravana's dad is like, well, we have to think of the safety of our people. Maybe you should marry him. And so she's like, do I have to say yes? He's like, only you may make that decision, my child, and may heaven give you the courage, I guess, to make the decision I want you to make. And so Kang is like, hurry up. And then Hawkeye shoots an arrow. Let this be her answer. We fight to the death. You ought to brush up on your fairy tales, mister. You know what always happens to the wicked villain who tries to marry the old king's daughter. Again, Stan just goes to the classics, right? Stan just does the standard stories. That's cool. That's fine. So it's no fairy tale, right? Yeah, before this day is ended, you may wish it were only a fable, says Wanda. Because now you don't have the surprise anymore, and the mighty Avengers stand together again. The fates have been kind, says the king. Perhaps all is not yet lost. And Ravana says, now it is Kang who must make the decision. And Kang, looking really awesome there. I do like that picture of him. The die is cast. I shall be merciful no longer. Let the fate that befalls be upon all your heads. I scoff at your arrow, Avenger. You are too weak to slay me in cold blood. Thus, while you hesitate, my signal dooms an empire. And so this is it. The four of us against Kang's invincible legions now. The signal, the call to battle, muster all forces. The command is attack. In the name of Kang the Conqueror, yonder realm shall be dust before nightfall. And so Kang's armies, with a really cool looking futuristic army tank, by the way. Kang's and some like shuttlecraft from Star Trek. Thus it begins. The new Avengers. Oh, Lord, don't say new Avengers. That opens up a whole big... without the armored might of Iron Man, the immortal power of Thor, the titanic strength of Giant Man, or the constant clever remarks of Wasp. Let's don't forget that. We only count the guys. Face the mightiest military armada ever assembled. Whatever you do, wherever you go, we urge you not to miss our next sensational issue. A generation from now. Oh, this is so good. And get this. Okay. I've said this before on here. You can fault Stan Lee for a number of failings. Sure. Just like anybody. As talented as he was. But you can't fault him for being too modest when it comes to hyping up these comics. He literally says here, Can you imagine DC ever saying this in a DC comic? No. The answer is no. You cannot ever imagine DC ever saying this in a DC comic. Okay, anybody at DC. He says, a generation from now, you'll be bragging about it to your children that you read this next issue. A generation from now, you'll be bragging to your children, hey kids, I read Avengers 24. Uh-huh. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, he's not wrong. He's not entirely wrong. We do. I don't know if I bragged to my children about it, but I certainly talk with my friends to infinity and back about these comics, right? So maybe he could have said, a generation from now, you'll be reminiscing with your friends about how great this issue was, while your kids are not interested at all. I don't know. Your kids will be watching the movies, right? Just like you, but they won't be that interested in the comic. But I just think it's so funny that he dares to say that, and yet he's not entirely wrong, depending on how you look at it, right? So till we meet again, face front, the best is yet to be. All right. So let's see if there's anything at the X-ray vision thing. Let's see if there's anything else in this issue of note. We got the bullpen bulletins. Saul Brodsky's up to something. Just a few tidbits. Dashing Don Heck takes over the penciling chores on Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., after which Jack Kirby will carry on in following issues. Okay, so it's really interesting how I do like how Marvel used to like keep you, Marvel used to keep you in the loop on every little thing that was happening. So I like that there's this tiny little coupon at the top, and I'm like, is this a subscription form for what? They don't let you pick. It's the MMMS. So I guess basically you send Marvel $1 and they would send you nutty gizmos. I'd like some nutty gizmos from Marvel. So I might print this out and send it in and see what happens. And then over here, I love this, right? It asks your age, not your zip code, right? Name, address, city, state. Doesn't ask your zip code, asks your age. And then it says school, college, or occupation in this little box. I'm not sure how you're supposed to fit something in there, but it shows that clearly Marvel was very curious as to how old their readers were. And I don't know if doing a survey through a coupon in the back of the comic was really the way to get that accurate information, but because I'm not sure how many like 8-year-olds were sending that in, but I guarantee you some teenagers in 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s were sending it in, if not more. They still are selling those shirts they had printed up. This Marvel had those printed up, and then we're selling them out of the comic. It's not like this is an ad for a t-shirt company like you would see now. No, this was Marvel bought a bunch of shirts, printed them up themselves, and we're selling them for $1.50 each. How about that? I looked through the letters page, didn't see any famous names. A lot of arguing about here and there. I think we could do a whole episode just on the letters page like this, but I do like that they had a 2-page letter page. And then, of course, next issue, drama beyond your wildest dreams, fantasy surpassing your highest hopes, thrills exceeding your most extravagant expectations. I wonder who wrote this box. All this parade of pleasure only from Marvel, the House of Ideas. And if you get the feeling we're bragging, you're right. Well, there you go. And all this for only 12 cents. Don't miss it. We're liable to ask questions later. Keep healthy, keep happy, and keep away from Kang. 12 cents for all this. It is really remarkable how much 12 cents was worth back then. All right. So there we go. That has been all of the Avengers, looking at the seminal, famous, spectacular Avengers number 23, Once an Avenger, starring the return of Kang and the return of Captain America after an absence of 0 issues. He left in 22. He comes back in 23. Oh, we missed you so much, Cap. Yeah, well, there you go. All right, so tune in next time. We will look at issue 24, the second half of the big epic Kang story. And I see by the clock timer on here that I was right to do this one issue by itself, because it still went like 49, 50 minutes. So, all right. Avengers Assemble, everybody. I'll see you in the next video. www.avengersassemble.net.